Well, good morning. Again, my name is Martin Tyner, and as she said, I'm a master falconer. I'm an eagle falconer. I'm a raptor rehabilitator, raptor educator, raptor propagator. I was the curator of birds at Busch Gardens in Southern California. I worked in the movie and television industry training big cats and elephants and bears and all of that ridiculous stuff. And I am the founder and CEO of the Southwest Wildlife Foundation Enoch Wildlife Rescue, which is our wildlife rescue organization here in southern Utah. And to be honest with you, we are the last federally licensed wildlife rescue facility from the Salt Lake area to the Los Angeles area left. So we cover a very, very large territory. And as she was talking, on December 14th, we're going to have a open house at the new Enoch Wildlife Rescue. That's our new Enoch Wildlife Rescue facility that we had our grand opening this last April. So it's our brand new facility, and it's the only one like it in the West United States. So it's been a big project for us, and we're really happy to have it. Now, what I'm going to do is I brought 5 friends with me today. I brought the cutest little screech owl you've ever seen. I have brought a prairie falcon, which is our native desert falcon, a peregrine falcon, a Harris hawk, and a golden eagle. And so we'll bring the birds out one at a time, and I'll tell you all about them. And this is an interactive program, so please, after I tell you about the birds, if you have questions, please ask, because that's what I'm here for. This is about the only time in your life that you'll ever be able to ask questions of a master eagle falconer. There are not many of us in the world. And so we'll go ahead and get started with my little friends. Hey, little whisper, come here, baby. Come here. Isn't that the cutest thing you ever saw? And he always poops on my hand with the first thing. Pictures are fine. There they go. There you go, baby. Get comfy. Okay. So this is a screech owl. Cute screech owl, yeah, this is our little screech owl. Now this is the western screech owl. We have an eastern one as well. The eastern one is a little bit more brownish instead of kind of grayish. So their coloration is just slightly different, but they're the same bird. Now, owls are remarkable creatures, and we have a great time with them. We love them. They're extremely wonderful to have in the environment here. First and foremost, owls have the softest feathers. Their feathers are so soft that when an owl flies and the air strikes those feathers, the feathers are so soft it muffles the sound of the air. So they have what we call silent flight. And so this little guy could fly around the room here, and in the process of doing so, you wouldn't hear a sound, it'd be dead silent with their silent flight. Now the problem with soft feathers is you're slow. And so since they're not fast, that they have to be very stealthy. And so the silence comes in. And because they're not fast, they're nocturnal hunters. They hunt in the early mornings and late evenings when it's dark. That puts their prey, and their prey is like mice, and they put the prey at a disadvantage because they can't see the owl coming. Does that make sense? But in the daytime, they could see the owl coming, and so that's why they do most of their hunting at night. Now, owls have those big, beautiful yellow eyes. Now, those eyes are designed to collect light. Now, eagles see great distances, but eagles are almost blind at night. Owls see wonderful at night, but they cannot see great distances. And so an owl can't see, a rabbit 5 miles away like an eagle can. And so an owl requires the quarry to be much, much closer. And so with that great night vision, these guys will sit up in a tree dead silent at night, and they'll sit there and listen, and they can not only hear the rodent going through, but with that great night vision, they can see them. And this little guy's owls, if you can imagine 200 miles from the nearest town, heavy cloud cover on a moonless night, just as dark as you can imagine, this little guy here can see just as well in those conditions as you can see in bright sunlight. Tremendous night vision. Not only do they have tremendous night vision, they have exceptional hearing. And so these guys, all the owls, you kind of look at his face and you kind of have a right dish shape and a left dish shape. Those are to collect sound. And all owls have those dish shapes in the face to collect sound. Now the ear is located the same place that yours and mine are. If you go back behind the eye, hit the ear. Back behind the eye is where the owl's ear is. And so they're right on the edge of the dish. And so the sound hits the dish and is basically directed into the ear. Does that make sense to everybody how that works? And so it's divided right in the center. So it's directional. And so the owls can hear if the sound is coming from the right or left, and they turn their head toward the sound, and with that great night vision, they can spot the mouse, glide down off the tree slow but dead quiet, grab the mouse, kill it, and have it for breakfast. They're the greatest rodent controls we have, especially the large owls like the great horned owl and the barn owl that we have here in this area. A great horned owl can eat a dozen mice every night. And so if you have owls nesting around your neighborhood, enjoy that. In fact, we put up owl nesting boxes to encourage that around my area, so that because the more owls we have, the less rodent problems we have. So we love to have the owls in the area. Now their hearing is so good, especially the larger owls like the great horned owl and the snowy owl and the great gray and some of these really big owls that we have here in the United States. Their hearing is so acute, they can actually hear a mouse or a vole crawling 2 feet under the snow. They can hear that. Not only can they hear the sound, they can kind of glide along and hear the little rodents under the snow cap. They not only can hear it, but it's so precise that they can tell exactly where that mouse is, 2 feet under the snow, dive down through the snow, stick their feet in, grab the mouse. And so they're just remarkable creatures designed for nocturnal hunting, more so than for daytime. But like I said, we love them to death. They're so beneficial. And this little guy right here was hit by a car, had a severe concussion, and his left eye does not dilate properly. So we can't release him back to the wild, because our job at our Enoch Wildlife Rescue Center is to return everything to the wild that we possibly can. Well, he can't go back to the wild, and because of that, we have added him as one of our wildlife ambassadors, so that we can bring him around and educate people about how remarkable these animals are. Now, it's a screech owl. They don't screech. Barn owls screech. There's several other owls that screech. This guy has the cutest little sound that you've ever heard. Just really adorable. And so he doesn't screech. And so at our rescue center, we had a little contest for people coming to the rescue center and online as well. And the name that was chosen for him, a screech owl that doesn't screech, his name is Whisper. So this is Whisper the screech owl. Owl questions that I can answer for you folks.
How old is he?
How old is he? You know, he's a full-grown adult when he came to our rescue center. And so once they have this coloration, as a juvenile, the coloration's a little different. When they have this coloration, I can't tell you if he's 3 years old or 5 years old. Average life expectancy for a little owl like this in the wild is about 5, maybe 10 years if everything goes really well. In captivity, we can go 10 to 15 years. So we can about double it. Yes?
So how long does it take him to get acclimated to coming from the wild?
Well, you know, I've been doing this I've been caring for sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife, especially the raptors, for 58 years. So I've got a little bit of time, and I'm fairly good at it. I can take a full-grown wild eagle right out of the sky and have them flying free and hunting with me in about a month.
If you're going to let them go, do you do less interaction?
Yeah, basically any animal that comes into the rescue center that the purpose is heal it up and turn it loose, and that's 90% of them. Then they get as little human interaction as possible. We do not want to acclimate them to people. But this guy, once we made the determination he can't go back to the wild, then we start to socialize him and handle him and get him used to so he can be comfortable in an audience. Yes.
How did you get them? Did you somebody turn them in? Or what?
Yeah, this one was hit by a car and had a severe concussion, and the state fish and game, the Division of Natural Resources, brought him to us.
Do you ban them at all, or?
We do not. Now, let me kind of qualify that for you. I can ban baby birds in the nest. So in the springtime, we can go do our nest counts and rappel off the cliffs and ban the baby eagles and falcons and hawks and stuff in the nest. That's fine. I can ban birds on their migration. And so basically, right now, as the birds are migrating south, okay, I can set up a trap station. We can trap them, take the measurements and the blood tests and that kind of stuff, and ban them. The federal government will not allow me to ban any animals that come into our rescue center for rescue and release. And the reason for that is the federal government has decided that any bird that comes into a wildlife rescue center, they write it off as dead. And they don't want us to ban dead animals. Doesn't make sense, but that's, yes, sir.
Why is it so docile?
Why is it so docile? Well,
60 people there.
yes. Well, because, you know, I've been working with him, and we've started off with bringing him out and with just a few volunteers, to the point of small groups. You know, I do all kinds of lectures like this, and you know, some of the groups are only 5 or 6 people, and so on. So we'll bring them out with the smaller groups, and we just kind of raise the number, keep them acclimated, keeping them calm. Now, the problem with these little screech owls, and they get used quite frequently for educational programs like this, but they're really delicate. And so if he becomes stressed, he won't eat. And it only takes a couple of 3 days of not eating, he's dead. Does that make sense? And so we have to be very cautious not to overstress him, yes.
Does this breed migrate?
Well, these do, they don't migrate great distances like you think of with like waterfowl and that kind of stuff. These guys nest at about 7,000 to 8,000 feet up in the lower mountains, and as cold weather comes in, they start moving down, and so in the wintertime, they're down here on the valley floor.
Do they live in the ground too? Or
No, these are nest in holes in trees, and so they nest in old woodpecker holes, is what they like. Yes?
What's their predator?
What's their predator? Everybody. Basically, these little guys, all the other 4 birds I've got would certainly kill and eat him, easily. Foxes and coyotes and badgers and just literally everybody, even though these are considered an apex predator because they're strictly a carnivore, these guys, again, they're slow flying at night. Now, if this was, let's say, a great horned owl that's this big, okay, a great horned owl can catch and kill a hawk or a falcon. Okay, a hawk or a falcon can kill a great horned owl. It depends on who has the advantage. And so, if the falcon is on the ground eating what it caught, and it's evening time and owls are out hunting, the owl can silent flight fly in, grab the falcon, kill it, and eat it. If the owl is out in the daytime and the owl is flying from, like I said, one perch to another, across the valley, that kind of stuff, then the falcon at 2,000 feet in the sky sees the owl, says, "Oh, I can kill that." The falcon will roll over, dive at 200 miles an hour, and blow up the owl. And the owl falls dead to the ground, and the falcon eats the owl. Does that make sense? And so they will kill each other. Yes?
What's the number one injury that you get with the birds?
The number one injury, we get a lot hit by cars. In fact, the number one injury to eagles, especially in the western United States, hit by cars. Because they eat a lot of roadkill, they eat dead deer and dead rabbits and that kind of stuff. People, drive down the highways here 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, and they see a bird, 300-400 yards ahead sitting on the freeway or the highway eating a dead rabbit, and people think, it'll move. No, They're big and they're very slow to get off the ground. And so, you know, what ends up happening is without people slowing their cars down, they hit the eagle. The eagle goes through their windshield or their grill. They break their car. They get a broken car. I get a broken eagle. And so that's the number one injury. I mean, we get a lot of barbed wire fences, field fences. We get a lot of electrocutions. We get a lot of poisonings. We get everything when they come to our rescue center.
What percentage is re-release that you
We actually have a really, really high success rate with my rescue center. And our success ratio is right about 50%. About half the animals that come in, we're able to release back to the wild. Now, that might not sound great, but when you understand that every animal that comes into our rescue center is that close to death, and it's an absolute emergency. And sometimes from the time we get them picked up and brought to our rescue center, they're dead before they arrive. So anytime you can walk up to a wild animal and pick it up or pet it, it's dying. Does that make sense, guys? Because they're wild. They want to stay away from us. And so most wildlife rescue facilities, on average, have a 20% success rate of returning back to the wild. So it's a tough, I can't say job, it's a tough volunteer.
So what do you do with the ones that you can't? Do you keep them all, or do they go to
Oh,
the
no.
zoos and stuff?
Well, actually, by federal law, we only get about 6 months. And if we cannot heal them up and return them back to the wild 100% healthy, we can apply to extend it if there's a possibility that it can succeed and go back to the wild. We can ask for an extension. Like this guy with his one bad eye, he's perfectly healthy otherwise, but with only one eye, he doesn't have good depth perception. He won't be able to hunt successfully. Does that make sense? And so he cannot go to the wild. His eye cannot be fixed. And so we requested, and it takes months and even years, we requested to add him to my education permit. And so he's on my education permit so we can use him for wildlife rescue. It's complicated. The government does not make this easy. So it's complicated, it's difficult to get that done. And so the truth of the matter is, the vast majority of animals, if they can't go back to the wild, by federal law, we have to euthanize. Now, there is no such thing as a no-kill wildlife rescue facility. These are not puppies and kittens, and we can't adopt them out to anybody that wants one. Does that make sense? These are wild animals. We can't just adopt them out. And so the government gives us very, very little choice. And so when they come in, if we can't get them back to the wild, we can ask for an extension if we can demonstrate that they've got a good possibility of being returned to the wild, but if we can't do that, we have to euthanize them. Now, as far as zoological facilities and that kind of stuff, these are very long-lived animals. I mean, a golden eagle in captivity can live about 60 years, which basically means that just the sheer number of eagles that come into my rescue center alone, I could supply every zoological facility in the country with more eagles than they can take. And so there just isn't a venue to turn these animals out, even for education.
How much does that little guy weigh?
He weighs about 5 ounces. So yes, just very, very cute and very adorable, and we love him to death. Huh, baby? So, his name is Whisper.
Does he recognize when you say that?
He doesn't care. He's a wild animal. He doesn't care. Yes?
Do you ever ask other people to rehabilitate them and get them ready to go out or anything like that?
It's illegal.
Pardon?
It's against the law.
Okay.
Basically, you have to be a state and federally licensed wildlife rehabilitator. To get a permit to do that takes years. You have to volunteer at a rescue center. You have to develop the skills. You have to, fill out paperwork and pass tests and all sorts of stuff to volunteer. And so this is not something that the average person can do. This is why there are so few wildlife rescue centers left in North America, because the truth of the matter is the state and federal government does not see this as biologically significant. They basically don't want people to do wildlife rescue, and so in the process of doing that, they make it so difficult that people don't. And if you can't, if you don't have a licensed individual, you can't even have a feather for one of these birds without a permit. And so when they get old like I am, and you're going, nobody helps, we don't receive a nickel of state or federal funding, and I've dedicated, 58 years of my life to do this and nobody cares, people stop. Does that make sense? And then we end up with fewer and fewer, so there's very few left. Yes? Yes, son?
Can you train an owl like you train any other animal?
You can train an owl like you train hawks or falcons, but they are not well equipped. We train hawks and falcons as falconer birds for hunting, but they're not well equipped to do that. And so the training, you'd be much better off with a red-tailed hawk than a screech owl. A screech owl is great for education. And all we do with that is we basically get them acclimated to people so they feel comfortable. But with the other birds that I brought with me today, we actually hunt with them. Any last owl questions? Yes?
No question, thank you for your service. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's so cute.
Oh, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the owl.
Okay. They're talking about you. Come on, Whisperer. There's my baby. In you go. There's my baby. Okay. We're just going to go from the smallest to the largest and work our way up. Hey, Piper, come here, baby. This is a prairie falcon. This is our native desert falcon. Isn't he beautiful? His name is Piper. And Piper's, again, one of my personal falconry birds, one of the birds that I hunt with. And he's the newest member of the family. We basically trapped him from the wild, and with my permits and things, I'm allowed to do that. Trapped him from the wild last July. And he is just a remarkably wonderful bird to work with. He loves to blow up pigeons. That's kind of his job. This guy right here, all of this comes off, we turn him loose. He leaves my glove, climbs 1,000, 2,000 feet in the sky to where he disappears into the clouds. And then I have a tracking system that I put on him that has a GPS output for my iPad so I can see where he's at, because he's way the heck up there. And he'll come back overhead, and when he comes back overhead, I'll flush a duck, a pheasant, a pigeon, whatever quarry that we're looking to hunt that day. He will then roll over and dive vertically at over 200 miles an hour, attempting to hit the quarry and blow it up. That's the way falcons fly. And that's the way they do in the wild. You're a good little one. And so he just does what he does naturally, only he does it with me. Now, falcons are very unique in the, not only do they fly at a very, hurry up, there you go. They not only fly and hunt at a very specific style of flight, and we'll talk about the hawks and eagles later, but they're built very, very differently. The first thing you'll notice is those beautiful black eyes. Now, all falcons have black eyes, all of them. Now, hawks can have brown eyes, blue eyes, gray eyes, red eyes, yellow eyes, orange eyes, depending on the species. But all falcons have black eyes. So if you see a bird of prey and you're going, oh, that has black eyes, you're looking at a falcon. Does that make sense, guys? So that's a very easy way to tell. Now, all falcons have a stripe that comes down below the eye. Some of the stripes, you can see on his face that he's got the stripes coming down below the eye. Some of the stripes are very, very faint, just kind of like one little line of single feathers that's almost impossible to see. Some of them are very thick, And I'll bring the peregrine falcon out next where you can see a really thick stripe. All falcons have pointed wings. And so the wings are smaller, pointy. These are, again, built for extremely high speed. All falcons have, as you can see, really quite short legs. Their legs are very short. You'll see with the hawk, the legs are much longer. Basically, if the falcon had long legs like the hawk has, when this falcon dives at 200 miles an hour and hits a duck or a pheasant with its feet, if it had long legs, the legs would break. So they have very short legs, so they can withstand that kind of impact. All falcons have long, skinny toes. And the reason for the long, skinny toes, they work like a baseball mitt to grab things in flight. Where the hawks and eagles' feet are much thicker and more powerful than what the falcon is. Huh, Piper? Yes, you're my baby, aren't you? And so quite unique in the way they fly. Now, the prairie falcon, most people don't like prairie falcons. Now, I have a real love for prairie falcons. I've flown, about 30 of them in the last 58 years. So I've flown a lot of prairie falcons. I really enjoy the prairie falcon, but these guys have a bit of an attitude problem. These guys are very instinctive. They're very, very nervous and high-strung and difficult to deal with. And so most falconers find these to be a little bit too challenging to want to work with because of the personality. Where the peregrine falcon has a much calmer personality, and falconers prefer that. But if you can get a prairie falcon to work well with you, these guys hit harder than any other falcon in the world. And so it's really wonderful if you can get a prairie falcon to work well. There's nothing that flies more spectacular than a prairie falcon. Now this is a male. Now the way we tell the difference between males and females in all birds of prey is their size. In all birds of prey, the females are a third larger than the males. In all of them. And so if you see two birds of prey of the same type sitting on a power pole together, and one is obviously bigger than the other one, the bigger one's the female. The smaller one's the male. And so this is a male prairie falcon. When I bring the peregrine falcon out, she's a female. She's significantly larger than what he is, even though the species themselves are of similar size. But because the big difference is male and female, that's the size difference. Now, as I said, these guys can be very difficult to deal with. And I had a female prairie falcon that was the worst one I've ever worked with. In fact, this female prairie falcon was so bad, I named her Horrible. Because horrible was horrible. Now, as you see, in Piper's one of the sweetest prairie falcons I've ever worked with. I love this guy. And he's so wonderful to deal with. He's really just a really sweet friend. And for a prairie falcon, this is remarkable. But Horrible, on the other hand, Horrible was so aggressive that the only way I could get Horrible to eat, I'd have food seen right here on my glove for her. And the only way I could get her to eat was to pinch her toes so she thought the food was biting her, and then she'd attack the food. Other than that, the only thing she would do is she'd look me square in the eye and scream at the top of her lungs. She was horrible. Horrible was so horrible that she would kill anything that flew. Horrible hit a golden eagle at 200 miles an hour and knocked it unconscious. Horrible killed large hawks and falcons, her same size, and killed them in flight. If there was another bird in the sky that was within 20 miles, she would go and kill it. She was horrible. Okay, got Horrible, got her trained, flew her through a season. And the nice thing about dealing with native wildlife like this one for falconry is if you and the bird don't get along real well, you can return them back to the wild, because they're native animals, and all that you've really done is interrupt their lifestyle for 6 months or so, and they've gotten lots of exercise, they're really fit. Just like with the rehab, we can put them back. Does that make sense? And so falconry is really nice, so we can put them back in the wild, especially when you consider that 80% of all birds of prey don't survive the first year. And so with a falconer, you get them past that first year, and now they have a 90% chance of survival. So we actually put more birds back than we take. So, head horrible for the season. I was so glad when she was gone, because she was horrible. The next spring, I got a little male falcon like this one, and he was quite a good little bird to work with, and we were having a great time. Now we take them, we get them raised up, we get them flying, and then we start to exercise, and we go out in the middle of the open desert. All of this comes off, we turn them loose, and they go flying, and they go circling over our head, and we bring out their toy. Now the toy is a leather sack that we tie food onto. It's called a lure. And so we can, basically we can call them back to the toy. And once we get them well acclimated to the toy, we actually use the toy as a fitness tool to get them physically fit and strong. And so we had this nice young falcon, beautiful little guy, wonderful little kid, and it's now time to let him go free fly for the very first time. So we go out about 15 miles north of Cedar City, out to the open desert, and all this equipment comes off. I take the falcon, turn it loose. And the falcon leaves my glove and starts to fly, and it's circling around over my head, waiting for me to bring out the toy. And so basically, as he's circling around, I'm getting ready to pull out the toy, and all of a sudden, there was a pin speck, 1,000+ feet up, a little dot in the sky, and I'm going, oh my God, it's a big female falcon. And she's just rolled over and started her death stoop. That big female falcon's going to kill my new little falcon that I've spent the last few months training. Well, I throw the toy to the ground. My little falcon comes in, lands on his toy. I dive over the top of him as this big female falcon tries to fly through me to kill him. She deflects off my back, lands 10 feet away from me, looks me square in the eye, and screams at the top of her lungs. It was horrible. Horrible recognizes my truck. For 3 years, every time I go out to the desert to either exercise one of my falconry birds or exercise one of my rescues that I'm working on, within 5 minutes, Horrible would be right there. And so for 3 years, I had to bring a sacrificial pigeon for the falcon goddess. So basically, as soon as she'd show up overhead, I'd chuck one of my really good 500-mile racing homing pigeons, and she'd chase the pigeon out of the valley, and then I could work with my birds. And so the process that I've just described to you works really, really well, as long as the bird isn't horrible. Falcon questions I can answer for you guys. Yes?
Contract pigeon control?
There are falconers that do what we call abatement projects, where they will fly a hawk over strawberry fields and chase the small birds out of the strawberry fields, and they'll also fly birds around airports where they have waterfowl settling in around the airports to drive them off, that kind of stuff. So there is some abatement work done. Now, I've not done abatement work. I've been far too busy caring for injured wildlife to do that. Yes?
How do they see so well?
They got really, really big eyes. And they have several times the number of light-sensitive cells in the eye, so everything they see is much clearer. So their eyes are just built that way. Yes, sir?
How does he kill his prey with his head?
No, they kill their prey with the feet. So what a falcon does is it, again, dives at about 200 miles an hour, head first, vertical, and just before it strikes the pigeon or duck or pheasant, it takes its feet and puts it above its head and rolls its toes up front 3 toes in a fist, leaves the back toe open, and hits and rips, breaking backs.
Is that the same as a hawk?
Well, hawks will actually bind to animals mostly on the ground, and or if they they bind into the air, they take them to the ground and they kill them on the ground. And so a falcon doesn't have the strength that the hawk has, and so the falcon has to disable first before it goes to ground. Yes?
So what is their hunting habits? I mean, when do they do it? In the night or?
Well, they're strictly what we call diurnal, which is a daytime hunter. And so they have very poor night vision, and so they hunt in the daytime, which gives them the distance vision they need, where the owls don't have the distance vision. Well, shall we put Piper away and bring out the peregrine? Piper, you're so cute. Yes, you are. Now, what I'm going to put on his head, this is called a hood, and this is his stress protection. Their eyesight's extremely good, and a lot of movement drives them nuts. And so I can put this over his head so that he can't see. So when we're transporting him in the car, or if there's too much activity going on and he gets upset, then he gets to settle down and relax and say, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to look at all these ugly people anymore. So that's his stress protection. That's my Piper. And just so you know, this is his second public appearance. So this is his second one. Hey, Helen, come on, sweetie. Okay, this is, yeah, say hi, get some exercise. This is Helen, and she is the Anatum peregrine falcon. This is the endangered species you've heard so much about. And as you see, she's a classic falcon, beautiful black eyes. A very thick stripe comes down below the eye for her, not a thin one like the prairie falcon. The pointy wings, it's okay, Helen. The pointy wings, again, short legs, long, slender toes. You know, she's a classic falcon. And this is a female, that's why she's so much larger, because the females are bigger than the males. And this gal has a bit of a story behind her. She's not from the wild. She came out of a captive breeding program. Okay? And in the captive breeding program, the breeder called me on the phone and asked me if I needed another falcon for my educational programs. And I says, no, I really don't. And he says, okay, we'll just have to euthanize her because she's mostly blind. And she was hatched mostly blind. It's a genetic issue. She has a lot of genetic problems. She could never survive in the wild. And so because of that, again, we can't just give them to people. And so she was basically scheduled to be euthanized. And I told the breeder, I says, go, bring her over. You know, and she's such a beautiful little thing. And she does really well with these educational programs, even though she's almost blind. And so, you know, we've added her to our educational programs. But she has a lot of, you know, I do not bring physically damaged birds to a program. That really bothers me when I see this. And the reason it bothers me so much is because what I want you guys to do is when you see my animals, I want you to see this beautiful falcon and going, oh God, she's beautiful. Instead of seeing a one-eyed, half a wing, busted leg, mangled up animal and say, oh my God, poor thing. Does that make sense, guys, to you? So I try to make sure that I bring that are at least looking 100% for what she does. But she has some issues. You can see the feathers on the leading edge of the wing here. It's a little hard to see. Let me turn it this way a little bit. It's okay, baby. You can see how that feather sticks out? That's drag. It's not supposed to stick out. But it just does. Now, their talons are supposed to curve under so they can grab. This one curls up. That's worthless. For hunting, it can't be used. She would never, ever survive in the wild. And so these are all genetic issues that she has that makes her unacceptable to go back to the wild. So she stayed with me. I've had her for, 6, 7 years. And she's done thousands and thousands of programs. And she's done very, very well, huh, sweetie? You're such a good girl. We named her Helen. You know, Helen Keller was deaf and blind, but was an amazing ambassador for the disabled. Well, this is our Helen, and she's mostly blind, but she's an amazing ambassador for wildlife. And so that's why we named her Helen. Now, the peregrine falcon, we owe our lives to this bird. I bet you didn't know that. We owe our lives to the peregrine falcon. Basically, in the late 1960s, the peregrine falcon population crashed really bad. In fact, it was only thought that there were about 4 dozen pairs of these left in all of North America. They were one of the most endangered creatures on the planet. Well, falconers such as myself, we brought all the peregrine falcons that we had together as a group, created a breeding project. Since the early 70s, we have raised tens of thousands of these and returned them back to the wild. The peregrine falcon is now the first animal to ever have been removed from the endangered species list. I mean, I've got a nesting pair of peregrines just right over here, just right here in Silver Reef. Within 100 miles of where you guys are sitting, I've got more than 100 pairs of peregrines here. They're doing wonderful. Now, the reason the peregrine became an endangered species is because of a pesticide that we were using calling DDT. Now, DDT was perfectly safe until it wasn't. Okay? When I was a kid, I grew up in a small agricultural community about 45 miles north of Los Angeles. In this small agricultural community, there was 4,000 people. I grew up surrounded by orange groves. Great place to be a kid. And us kids would play in the orange groves, and the farmer would drive through with his tractor and sprayer, spraying the trees with DDT, killing the insects to keep the insects from damaging the fruit. And as us kids would play in the orange groves, I mean, we would come out of the orange groves just covered in DDT. That might explain a few things. You know, I remember going to the community swimming pool and playing in the pool as a bunch of kids, and they'd spray sprayers with DDT for mosquito abatement at the swimming pool. In the 1940s and 50s, you go to the paint store, you could order paint, and they could put DDT in the paint to paint the walls of your house to kill any insects that land on the walls. Okay? DDT was the safest pesticide in the world until it wasn't. And what the peregrine falcon told us, that DDT prevented them from digesting, from assimilating calcium. And so since they couldn't get the calcium out of their food, they could not lay eggs that were strong enough to hatch. And the falcon population was crashing and crashing hard. Now, these are an apex predator. You and I are an apex predator. They're at the top of the food chain. We're at the top of the food chain. What affects them affects us. So these are the canaries in the coal mine for us. You know, where miners would go into the coal mines and they take a cage of small birds, and every once in a while they look over at the cage, and if the birds died, everybody get out of the mine really fast because there's poison gas in the mine. And so that was the alarm system, was basically small birds. Well, this is our environmental alarm system that we use to tell how our environment is doing. And all of these birds fit that build, along with a lot of other animals that we work with. And so if it wasn't for the peregrine falcon, and if we didn't listen to the peregrine, my children and my grandchildren would have been born with birth defects. But because we listened to these guys and we stopped using DDT in a very bad way, and it's not that DDT is bad, it was using it in a very, very bad way. And we stopped using it in a very bad way so that you and I are perfectly healthy and our children and our grandchildren are healthy. And that, you know, we all have DDT in our bodies. We all do. And DDT is not water soluble. It won't leave your body. It's there for the rest of your life. But the higher the concentration, the more damage it does. Does that make sense to everybody? And so the peregrine falcon saved our lives. And that's one of the reasons I dedicated my life to saving theirs. So that's why I do what I do. Falcon questions that I can, yes, sir.
Isn't this the falcon that I saw on a nature show, and they're finding a lot of them are nesting in urban cities? I thought it was this one.
It is this one, and we did that on purpose.
Okay.
Let me kind of explain. Okay, we have raised tens of thousands of peregrine falcons, and we have returned them back to the wild. And we have filled every appropriate falcon habitat in North America. Wonderful. Now what do we do with the rest of them? Okay, well, let's see. Peregrine falcons love extremely high cliffs, and they love to eat pigeons. Where do we have really high cliffs and lots of pigeons? Vegas, Salt Lake, New York, Los Angeles, any big city, Seattle, so on and so forth. Okay, now birds of prey are hardwired into their brain to return to where they learned to fly. And so we can take peregrine falcons and we can put what we call a hack box, which is a box that's about 4 foot square with bars, wooden bars all the way around, so the birds can see out. And when they're big, fluffy chicks starting to grow feathers, they can basically regulate their own body temperatures. We can put them in those boxes, and we drop food down a chute so they can get fed. And then when they're fully feathered out and full grown, which is about 9 weeks, we can open the box, and the falcons can come out of the box, and they can fly around and fly back in the box for more food. And as they get flying around, they start to catch pigeons. Okay? Then they migrate out. Then they leave. And they're hardwired to do this. It's not a taught behavior. It's within their brain. And so they'll migrate out and head south. And then when they're fully mature, which is about 3 years old, they will return to where they learned to fly. Okay, so they come back to the cities where they learn to fly, and as long as there's not another resident pair within the territory, because if there's another pair in the territory, they'll drive the chicks away. As long as there's not another resident pair in the territory, they'll pick a mate, and we put up basically nesting boxes now that the falcons can go in and nest on ledges on tops of buildings and raise more babies and put up video cameras. Now, biologically speaking, that's not very important. Biologically speaking, peregrine falcons here are far more important because this is the proper environment for them. But from a PR standpoint, we can put in video cameras because I want you to love these animals as much as I do. And so you have the opportunity to sit on your computer and type in, peregrine webcam and see the peregrines and eagle webcams and owl webcams and all that kind of stuff. And you can watch these guys. You can watch them court. You can watch the male bring food back to the nest. You can watch mama brooding the eggs, and you can watch the eggs hatch, and you can watch the whole life cycle of these animals right from the comfort of your home. And if I can get you guys to appreciate these guys like I do, when you get to a place like here in southern Utah where we have good peregrine habitat, you won't hurt them. And so that's why we've done that. So that's why they're in the cities, because we put them there. Other falcon questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is she able to fly free?
No.
Okay.
No, she can only see approximately 3 feet ahead of her. And so even in this room, if I were allowed her to fly in the room, she'd hit the walls before she could see them. And so she is not allowed to fly. Now, because of that, she gets a little extra special attention because of that. And so she sleeps in the house. She sits on a perch in the living room right next to the TV because the lights and movements of the television entertain her. Where my other birds, that's too much visual input, it would drive them nuts. But for her, she can sit there and watch the television, and she hangs out with the family, and then we do travel quite a bit doing these kinds of programs with her. So she gets a lot of enrichment, but she cannot be allowed to fly. Yes?
Can the peregrine kill a bird in flight?
Yes. The falcons, like the peregrine and the prairie falcon, like I said, hit their quarry at 200 miles an hour, and if they hit it properly, it's dead before it hits the ground. And so if it hits a a pigeon, let's say in the back or in the wing, the pigeon will fall to the earth but still be alive. They have to fly down and finish it off. And the way they finish it off,
Something as high as a starling.
well,
A bird very high flight can still be killed by the peregrine.
yes. Yeah, these do catch small birds as well. And so the horned larks, canyon wrens, starlings, if this falcon is flying, he's up 1,000, 2,000 feet, and there's a flock of starlings down below her, she'll dive right through the flock of starlings, attempting to hit one, and they hit it and it's dead and falls to the ground, and they go down and have their breakfast. So yes. Yes?
Do they mate for life too?
They do. All birds of prey do pair bond for life. Now, if the mate dies, then they can choose another mate. But that usually takes a couple of years before they finish their mourning process and is willing to accept a new mate. Any last falcon question before we bring out a hawk? Huh, pretty girl. And she, I don't put a hood on her because her vision's so poor. Let me grab your hood. There's my girl. Harris hawk. Now you can see she's very, very different than the falcons. Built very differently, different strengths, different abilities. But again, this is one of the most efficient hunting birds in the world. And so this little gal right here, on a good year, she'll catch between 80 and 100 jackrabbits. And again, she catches the rabbit, she gets to eat what she wants, and then we bring the rest of the rabbit back to our rescue center, butcher it out as food for the injured wildlife that we care for. Because food is so incredibly expensive, anytime I can get free food, I'm really happy. And so she helps provide food for them. Now the first thing you'll notice is beautiful brown eyes. They're not black. Like I said, hawks can have brown eyes, blue eyes, gray eyes, yellow eyes, orange eyes, red eyes, depending on the species. Falcons have black eyes, so she has her brown eyes. Now, hawks do not have pointed wings. They have rounded wings. And so basically, she does not fly at high altitude and dive at high speed. She basically is a sprint bird. She sits on my glove, a rabbit takes off running, she leaves my glove and attempts to catch the rabbit in the first 100 yards. If it goes much past 100 yards, the rabbit will outdistance her. She comes back to my glove and we flush another one. And so she kills everything on the ground. Now, because she catches things on the ground, she has to be a lot more agile than the falcon. The falcon is diving at 200 miles an hour, but the pigeon, the duck or pheasant has nowhere to go. It's in the air. And so the duck or pheasant or pigeon has to rely on the ability to outmaneuver, just twitch this way or that way. The falcon misses, then the quarry gets away. These guys basically have to be able to steer quite efficiently. And so look how much bigger her tail is. And that tail is very maneuverable. You can see how much I can wind her up in the morning to get her started. Huh, Belle. And so that allows her to be extremely agile, zigzagging through the trees and the brush and that kind of stuff to catch the very, very agile quarry on the ground that she's looking to hunt. Now she has long legs. You can see how much longer her legs are than the falcon, because she has to reach through the bushes to grab whatever it is that she's attempting to catch, mostly mammals. And as you can see, her feet are huge, but they're thick and they're much, much more powerful. If my falcon were to catch, let's say, a duck on the ground and it wasn't disabled first, a duck could beat the falcon with its wings and injure the falcon. It's very important to disable it before it goes to ground because the falcon doesn't have that kind of strength. The hawk right here could not only, like I said, kill a duck very easily, but also, like I said, even rabbits up to the size of an 8-pound jackrabbit. So she has a lot more strength and durability than what the falcons do. Huh, sweetie? Now, I've been flying these guys for, like I said, 48 years. That's quite a long time. Back in California, because that's where I grew up, was in California. Back in California, I had a female Harris hawk, very much like this one, nice big female, and her name was Sierra. And Sierra came to me, she had a bit of a problem. She had been stolen from her nest by some teenage boys. Now that's really, really bad because a hawk, falcon, eagle, doesn't matter. A hawk raised by man has no fear of man. And a hawk raised by man with no fear of man, we call that imprinting, makes them incredibly dangerous. Because if they have no fear of you, if they get angry with you for any reason at all, they're going to hurt you. So it's actually safer to work with wild ones than it is to work with those that have been raised in captivity. So we have this big female Harris hawk like Belle, stolen from a nest by the teenage boys, raised inappropriately, severely imprinted. She was dangerous. That hawk was so dangerous that her favorite thing to hunt was cows. We could be out on the desert, and if there was a cow within a mile, she had to go beat up a cow. She attacked horses. She attacked people jogging. She attacked a farmer on his tractor. Needless to say, we couldn't put her back in the wild. She was dangerous. So she stayed with me the rest of her life as one of my wildlife ambassadors and one of my falconry birds. And she and I got along wonderfully together. We had a good working relationship. Now, the reason she came to me was not only did these kids steal her from the wild and raised her inappropriately, they were incredibly abusive to her. She ended up with a broken leg. And so when the kids took her to the vet called the Fish and Game confiscated her and brought her to me. Now, I could fix the broken leg, but like I said, I couldn't fix the emotional scars that she carried with her for the rest of her life. But she got along with me wonderfully, and that's all that really mattered. Well, back in California, the small town that I grew up in, everybody knew everybody. We never worried about locking our doors, or in fact, we always left the keys to our cars on the floor of the car. Guys, remember those days when you didn't worry about anybody stealing your car? And so I always left my keys on the floor of the car. So if my buddy ever called up and says, "Hey, can I borrow your car?" I said, "Sure, the keys are on the floor." You know, that's the kind of environment I grew up in. And so I had this little Toyota car. The back seat would fold down, and she would sit on a perch in the back seat of the car. And that's how I transported her out to the fields and let her go chase rabbits. Well, in the process of doing that, one day, we went out to go chase a few rabbits, and I decided that I was thirsty, so we'd stop at the local gas station to buy a soda pop. And so we parked out in the parking lot and walked into the store to buy a soda pop. As I came walking out of the store, I heard screaming. And I saw a guy bailing out of my car. It's okay, Belle. What Belle is saying right here basically is right now is when she and I have been out hunting every day since the 1st of September. And so she's basically saying, "Put me back in my box. Why are we talking to these people? Let's go chase rabbits." So she's basically being a little extra bouncy because she wants to go hunting. So anyway, saw this guy bailing out of my car. So I went running across the parking lot, and I get to my car. My hawk is on the ground next to the car. So I picked her up, put her back on her perch on the back seat of the car, and that's when I noticed my keys had been picked up off the floor and put in the ignition. He tried to steal my car. Now, I don't know if he saw my hawk, didn't see the hawk, saw the hawk and thought it was stuffed. I have no idea what was going through his mind, but if you can only imagine, you jump into a strange car, grab the keys off the floor, put them in the ignition, having 8 razor-sharp talons puncturing the back of your neck, wings beating, and the most awful growl you've ever heard. There were quarter-sized drops of blood going down the street. I know he needed stitches. Going to assume that's the last car he ever tried to steal. My hawk got the nickname my feathered Doberman Pinscher. Now, like I said, I've been doing this for 58 years. And my sweet wife, Susan, we've been married for 45 years. And can you imagine somebody's put up with me for 45 years? She's an amazing young lady. Well, our very first date, I took her hunting with that hawk. I'm a romantic kind of a guy. So we get out to the field, get my hawk out of the car onto my glove like this, and then as my then girlfriend but now wife approached, my hawk growled at her violently. Then my hawk turned back around facing me, lifted her tail, and pooped on her. That was our first date. She married me anyway, it's her fault. Well, my wife and I have written a book. If you like animal stories, this is 40 Years of Wildlife Rescue Stories and the Wisdom of Grandparents. The eagle on the front cover, that's Scout. You'll get to meet him in a few minutes. And my eagle, just so you understand, has autographed the book. If I can get over here to the page. There we go. That's his footprint. So, only book in the world autographed by a wild eagle. And again, the profits from the sale of the book go to our rescue center to help us feed the animals. But in the process of writing this book, I told my sweet wife Susan, I says, you know, we need to put the story of my old Harris hawk in the book. And my wife looks at me, she says, well, if you're going to tell everybody about our first date, you have to tell everybody about the rest of our first date. And I says, no, the story's funnier where I end the story where you get pooped on. And my wife says, no, you have to tell everybody about the rest of our first date. And I says, well, Sue, if you want to tell everybody about the rest of our first date, you have to write the story. So she did. And so if you want to find out why my sweet wife married me, you got to read the book. I know that's terrible, but that's, you know, we do sell these as a fundraiser for our foundation. It's okay, Belle. Okay, hawk questions that I can answer for anyone.
How did you tell us how you got them?
Belle came out of a captive breeding program. Now these are normally found in southern Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas is where these are found. They don't get quite this far north. But she came out of a captive breeding program in Louisiana. And so basically, sweet, pretty young ladies in the South are referred to as Southern Belles. And so this is my Southern Belle. We named her Belle. So that's where she got her name. Yes, I think.
What does she weigh?
She weighs about 1,300 grams. So how many pounds? About 2.5. Yes.
Red tails are bigger than looks like these, huh?
Red tails are very similar in size. Now you can get, she is actually a very large Harris hawk, female, and so she's right up there with female red tails, but a very large female red tail would be bigger than she is. But one of my students right now has a female red tail, and his female red tail is about 20 grams lighter than she is.
And that's what you find more up here in this area.
We have a lot of red tails here. We have a lot of birds of prey here. But the red tail is the most common large hawk throughout all of North America. Yes?
Do they hunt together?
Yes, the Harris hawk is quite unique, and it's one of the only birds of prey in the world that hunts in groups like a pack of wolves. Now, most birds of prey, mama hawk does her hunting, brings food back to the nest. Daddy hawk does his hunting, brings food back to the nest. The Harris hawk, basically, mom and dad work together. And even last year's babies, remember I told you with the falcons, if the baby falcons come back to the nesting territory, the parents will drive them away. Not the Harris hawk. Basically, the baby falcons from the previous year will join mom and dad this year to bring food back for this year's babies. You do not want to be a cottontail rabbit around Tucson, Arizona. You take off running because this hawk is chasing you. You outmaneuver the first hawk, there's a second one right behind it. You outmaneuver the second hawk, there's a third one right behind back. Yes?
Yeah, we lived in Palm Springs there, and I think it was a Cooper's hawk that was chasing other birds. Are those the one that chase and eat other birds?
Oh, absolutely.
Cooper, yeah, a lot smaller
Yes.
and faster, of course. Yeah, it went right past us chasing either a dove or I think it was a dove it was after. But small.
The Cooper's hawk is the hawk everybody loves to hate. You put out your bird feeders. You put out your bird baths. You attract all the beautiful songbirds in and around your backyard, and in this area, the quail, to come roaming around your backyard. And so the early spring, and you go, oh, you know, on the bird bath, look at that, it's our first robin of the spring. And then all of a sudden this brown thing comes streaking through the backyard, grabs the robin by the head, hauls it off, kills it, and eats it. That's a Cooper's hawk. Please do not be mad. He is doing his job. And they really have a pretty tough job. And their job is extremely important. Their job is to cull out of the flocks the weak, the sick, and the dumb. to help keep the... Unfortunately, we are at the top of the food chain above everybody else. We haven't got Martians yet to come down and cull us out yet. So, yes.
Her beak coming back to the eye is naked.
Well, it's called the cere, the skin around the nose. This is called the cere that's yellow, and that's just skin. And then all birds of prey are that way. Yes, sir. How old is she? She's about 6 years old as well. So, yes.
How do they recognize you as you? Like your voice and appearance and all
How do you recognize your husband?
by looking at me.
There you go. Very good. Extremely good eyesight. Now they have no sense of smell, so they can't tell you what you smell like because they have no sense of smell at all. But extremely good eyesight and good hearing, and so that's how they recognize things. Yes.
So she's a female. She's 30% bigger than the male.
Yes.
Is there a color difference?
No. Male and female, the coloration is exactly the same. The size is what determines. Yes.
Is that sense of smell, no sense of smell, typical of birds of prey?
Birds in general. Birds in general, I know you've all been told don't touch baby birds with your hand because the smell from your hand will frighten the adult birds away. That's not true. That's an old wives' tale. Birds in general have no sense of smell. Now, there are a few exceptions. The turkey vulture is a great example. A turkey vulture has a great sense of smell, and they can smell a dead, rotting carcass from 3,000 feet in the air. And that's how they find their food. But the vast majority of birds have no sense of smell at all.
So can they taste their food?
You know, they have a little bit of taste, but not like we do, not like mammals. Yes?
How common is it for a bird to attack a human?
How common is it a bird to attack a human? The only time birds will attack humans is if you happen to be too close to their nesting territory. And so the goshawk, which is about the same size as the Harris hawk here, it's a forest hawk, it's built very similar to this, quite aggressive. If you are walking, in fact, we have to close down trails in Zions and Bryce Canyon, hiking trails, because we have goshawks nesting in the park. And if tourists walk too close and don't know that, the last thing you're going to hear if you get too close to a goshawk nest is a kai, 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 kai sound, just as it hits you at 80 miles an hour on the back of the head and knocks you to the ground. Okay? So they can be aggressive when you're around the nesting territory. And there's some small birds that'll do that, but the truth of the matter is the small birds are just being threatening. They can't hurt you. But some of the larger ones, if you get too close, can. Any last hawk questions? Yes.
Going back to the Cooper hawk, chasing the birds around the feeder there, I had a couple of decoy doves set up on mesquite trees for a while. Had them sitting out to drink the coffee one day, and they
Oh, yeah.
hit that thing by 190 miles an hour, how fast they were going, and sit there and look at it like, what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the young ones, when the young ones don't know any better. They'll do that. Well, Belle, should we put you back and bring out Scout? Should we do that, big guy? Okay. Yes, you go. Here we go. Mhm. Now, this is the typical falconry glove. You notice I'm quite sure that I changed gloves. Falcons, because their feet are thin and doesn't have the power, we use a much softer, lighter glove for the falcons. The hawks have a much more powerful grip and talons, and so we use a heavier glove, but this is still relatively light and it's comfortable. And this is what I use for the bigger birds, the hawks and the eagles that are far more powerful. my sweet wife Susan, she gets really nervous when I handle eagles. And so she gets upset when she sees my eagle sitting in my arm with a foot here and a foot here. That bothers her. So my wife went out and bought me an eagle falconry glove. Now, this is cowhide. This is extremely heavy, extremely stiff, and extremely uncomfortable. But I've been married for 45 years. I learned a long time ago, if your wife buys you a present, you use it. See, I'm a really smart guy. Hey, pretty boy, turn around. Here's my baby. Now, rule number 1, never stick your head in a box with a wild eagle. You know, I have to do that, but please don't do this. I'm a big guy. Here's my boy. Come on. A little bit bigger. Okay, this is a golden eagle. His name is Scout. He is 22 years old. A farmer up in Wyoming was threatening to shoot him, and I was called in by the federal government to go to Wyoming, trap him, remove him before he got shot. So this is a full-grown wild eagle. And let's start from the bottom and work our way up, shall we, big guy? Look at these feet. Get comfy. Get comfy. Let me show me your feet. Okay. 600 pounds per square inch of crushing power in those feet. He can drive those talons through my glove and crush the small bones in my hand. It's really good he likes me. We do appreciate that. My eagle has over 7,000 feathers. 7,000. Now, there are many native people around the world that believe that if you say your prayers with an eagle feather, the eagle feather will carry your prayers to God. Well, I've got over 7,000 of them. I'm in really good shape. All 7,000 feathers only weigh about 2 pounds in weight, so they're very light. Of course, the bones of birds, the bones are hollow. So his entire skeletal structure, again, about 2 pounds in weight. Yet there's a portion of my eagle's body that represents half his total body weight, and that's the large chest muscles right here, the pectoral muscles. And that's the motor that he uses to drive that beautiful 6-foot wingspan that allows eagles to fly where hawks and falcons cannot. For eagles have been spotted at altitudes greater than 30,000 feet. And this eagle can comfortably soar in a 40-mile-an-hour wind, which would ground a hawk or a falcon. And of course, the eyesight of an eagle is legendary. Let me tell you truly how well this eagle can see. This eagle weighs 8 pounds. Now, this is an 8-pound bird with eyes larger than yours. It's okay, Scout. I know, come on. Yeah, this is an 8-pound bird with eyes larger, eyes larger than yours. Not only is his eyes larger, he can see approximately 8 times further than you can. But you and I, we get a pair of binoculars, we can see 8 times further. Well, not only can he see 8 times further, he has 6 times the number of light-sensitive cells, the rods and cones, in the back of the eye than we have, so everything he sees is 6 times clearer. This guy can spot a jackrabbit 5 miles away, and he does. Now, a depredation bird is a bird that a farmer says is a threat to his livestock. And this bird was a depredation bird. A farmer was trying to get a permit to shoot him. And he notifies the Department of Agriculture. Department of Agriculture notifies the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service then contacted me and says, there's a farmer going to get a permit to shoot an eagle. Can you go to Wyoming and rescue the eagle? But the agreement is the eagle may never go back to Wyoming. Now, they're hardwired to return to where they learned to fly. Okay, so we just turn him loose, goes right back to Wyoming. So we can't do that. And so most eagles, if they are rescued out of a depredation situation, they go into a zoo as an education bird, and they're never allowed to fly again. Okay? I am the first person in North America licensed to trap and train a wild eagle in falconry. And so he gets to fly free. He goes thousands of feet in the sky. He flies with the wild eagles. And out north of Cedar City, Enoch, out of the ledges, you can, I can watch my eagle soar, and there's sometimes 2 or 3 other eagles soaring that same set of ledges. And I look up and I say, well, I think that eagle's mine. It's a little hard to tell because they're so far away. And you always have to wonder what they're talking about. To see my eagle cruising with his friends, I can see my eagle looking over his buddies to say, watch this, I have a trained human. All I have to do is fly over that guy's head, and he'll run out through the desert with a stick, hitting bushes, flushing out rabbits for me to catch. And I will. Now, if there are no rabbits to be found and it's time to go home, I can blow my whistle, he'll fly back, land on my glove for food. Or I have his toy, leather sack, tie some food onto it, blow the whistle, throw the toy out on the ground, and my eagle will go into a wonderful dive, headlong vertical, about 145 miles an hour, and he will kill the leather sack, which is convenient. One day my eagle got a little confused. Thousands of feet in the sky, no rabbits to be found, time to go home. Blew my whistle, threw his toy out on the ground, and my eagle went into a wonderful dive, headlong, vertical, 145 miles an hour. It was impressive. But it became apparent very quickly he wasn't coming down to kill his toy. He was coming for my arm. When I woke up, I was 6 feet back, laying face down in the dirt, with my eagle standing next to me, looking at me to say, why are you laying there? I had a long talk with my eagle that day, how I could not withstand the impact of an 8-pound bird at 145 miles an hour, and I would appreciate if you never do that again. He dislocated my shoulder and damaged my back and knees. But that experience has given me knowledge. See, I have a knowledge that none of you have. I have an absolute knowledge of exactly what is going through the mind of a jackrabbit just before an eagle kills him. I don't recommend it, but it's mine. Eagle questions that I can answer for you guys. Yes?
How do you rescue them? When the very first time you've never seen them before, how do you track them?
How do I trap them? I'm not going to tell you. Because I'm one of very few people in North America that can legally do this. And so we don't want people going out and attempting to trap these animals illegally. But I will tell you this much. The trap I use, I basically, I put a weight on the trap. The trap gently ensnares the bird's feet. I put a weight on the trap so the bird cannot fly away but can drag the trap away. I would never stake the trap to the ground because if it pulled against it, it could injure his legs. And he's far too priceless a creature to injure. So anyway, the weight I use is 2.5 pounds for him. With a 2.5 pound drag weight, he could not get off the ground. Now, there are farmers that believe that eagles swoop down, carry off sheep, cows, and children. And sometimes it's not worth arguing the point, just rescue the animal. And so that was Scout's situation. And so the average weight of a newborn lamb is like 11 pounds. He can't carry 2.5, he's not going to carry 11. And as far as all of the mothers out there, if there's a mother who is out on the desert with a child that weighs less than 2.5 pounds, she should be arrested. So these are really not a threat. I mean, could they kill a brand newborn lamb? Yes. Would they? Probably not. They're primarily scavengers. And so if they find a dead lamb, they land on it, they start eating it. The farmer drives up, says, well, the eagle killed the lamb, so I'm going to kill the eagle. Does that make sense? And so it's generally not their problem. Yes?
So, this isn't a golden eagle, this is what type of eagle?
This is a golden eagle.
It is a golden eagle.
This is a golden eagle. Now, the golden eagle gets his name from the same place the bald eagle does. The bald eagle because of the white head. Golden eagle because of the golden feathers on the back of his head. So that's his gold right there. Some of them, it's a much lighter color, but he's a nice, very dark golden eagle. But yes, he's a golden eagle. Very, very typical of the ones we have here in the West, yes.
What's he trying to say?
He's going, Dad, not one of these people looks like a rabbit. Let's go. You want to go play, huh? Yes.
I noticed the bird, not just the eagle, but the others as well, kind of done a headbutt to you or a nose butt. Is that recognizing to you as a...
Well, basically, I have the privilege of developing a working relationship with these animals. And of all the birds of prey in the world, if handled properly, the golden eagle is one of the gentlest and most affectionate. And so, he's kind of, we're kind of buddies together. And so he comes close, he likes to cuddle, and it helps him to feel safe with me. And so I preen him, and you can see him pulling on my shirt and stuff. He's preening me back. So that's affection. I used to have a mustache. Okay, got rid of the mustache because he liked to pluck the mustache. It was painful. So, but that's just being affectionate. Yes.
His mouth is open, is he hot?
It is warm in here. Yeah, this guy right here, the temperature's above 70. I have to watch him carefully. 10 below zero, he's happy as a clam. And so when he's up, 10 below zero, he's happy.
And his weight?
Oh, his weight. He flies just under 8 pounds.
And a mama would be?
The golden eagle, they do have a range of weights. A male is about 5 to 9 pounds for a male, and a female is about 9 to 14 pounds. Yes?
Now, the sea eagles are quite a bit bigger, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, the bald eagle is a sea eagle that we have here in North America, and there's the European sea eagle. They eat, again, fish, but they are bigger than what we call the booted eagles, which the golden eagle is the booted eagle. Yes?
Do any of these birds go after the wild turkeys around here?
Go after the wild turkey. I'll tell you a little story. Wild turkeys don't belong here. Just so you know. There was one biologist in the state fish and game that loved to turkey hunt. And so he decided he wanted to not have to drive to Texas to go turkey hunting. He wanted to turkey hunt here in Utah. And so he made a deal with the fish and game in Texas to trade a bighorn sheep for turkeys. And they brought the turkeys into the state and released them in the state, trying to get turkey groups established here, which is, I'll be honest with you, it's a dumb thing. Because turkeys, when they get around humans, they acclimate to humans, and then wild turkeys can be quite aggressive and chase children and beat up dogs and that kind of stuff. And I get a lot of phone calls every year about wild turkeys, and a lot of the communities that border the wilderness, that the wild turkeys are coming down their yard and beating up their dogs and cats and chasing their children. And I said, call the fish and game. They weren't supposed to be here in the first place. But like I said, we as humans always do stupid things. And so when the turkeys were first brought into Utah, like I said, I work a lot with the fish and game guys. And so I told the biologist, I says, I'm really glad you brought those turkeys in here for me, because I had the only falconer bird in the western United States that's big enough to hunt a turkey, which is my golden eagle. And he says, well, you can't do that. And I says, yeah, I can. And he says, no, you cannot hunt those turkeys. They're protected. And I says, the falconry regulations supersede all other regulations as far as what you can and cannot do. And the falconry regulation says that I can hunt all upland game species from September through February, and turkeys are an upland game species, so I can go hunt all the wild turkeys I want. He immediately ran to the wildlife board and had the laws changed. So he wrote a law specifically for me. I'm so honored. Yes.
Would you be allowed to breed those birds that you can't breed?
Well, we cannot breed eagles in captivity. We can do hawks and falcons and owls, yes. And like I said, the peregrine falcon and the Harris hawk were both out of captive breeding programs. Yes.
I know she looks into your eyes. If you put sunglasses on or a different hat, would that change the recognition?
Well, no, he'll still have the recognition. These are incredibly intelligent people. It's just like if you took off your glasses, people still know it was you. So they're incredibly intelligent, but any changes they'll kind of look at you and says, why do you look funny? And so, I do fly, but I do have a hat that I wear in the wintertime, and it was a gift sent to me by a Russian eagle falconer. And so it's, kind of one of these weird black furry kinds of hats. And people think it's, why are you wearing that ugly hat? And it says, because it came from an eagle falconer. So I wear it when I fly my eagle. So.
But the bird, does it like it, or?
Well, he's used to that hat, but if I put a baseball cap on, it would take him a little while to get used to a baseball cap. Yes?
Did you ever fly a bird and lose it? Like it's
I have flown birds, not that have ever just flown away. I have had falcons caught by wild eagles killed and eaten. I have had falcons killed by wild hawks. I have had coyotes and foxes kill and eat birds of prey on the ground. I've had a couple of birds shot. And so those kinds of things have happened. But not that they have just flown away, no. Any last questions before we call it a day, guys?
Do any of the other birds stay in your house or just?
Well, the truth of the matter is, the peregrine falcon stays in the house. The wintertime, my Harris hawk stays in the house because they're southern Arizona. They don't like, up in Enoch, we get snow and cold. So for her comfort, she stays in the house, but goes out in the daytime. And the prairie falcon stays in the house because we're acclimating him. And so we have those three in the house and the rest of the birds are out. And then a lot of them are up at the new rescue center. Yes? I've got a bald eagle at the rescue center right now. And so I've rescued a lot of bald eagles in my life, many, many of them. Yes, sir. You had a...
Of the birds you showed us, are they all protected from hunting and?
Yes. Basically, the only thing that's not protected in Utah, the pigeon, the starling, the English house sparrow, and the Asiatic ringneck dove. Every other bird in the country are protected at some level. So, yes?
Was there a mate to this eagle?
No, this eagle was 2 years old when I trapped him. So he's 22 years old, so we've been together 20 years. And I'll be honest with you, when the falconry season, September through February. The courtship season for the golden eagles starts about early to mid-January is when it starts and goes into March. Okay, so he flies through the courtship season. If he finds a pretty little lady eagle that's cuter than I am, he will fly away and never come back. Because he'll pair bond to her, and that'll be the end of it. If he pair bonds to her, he'll stay here. He won't go to Wyoming. Does that make sense to everybody? And so he has the right to leave. But we've been together 20 years, which is just absolute proof that I'm adorable. So. Anyway, if someone would like a book, I do have a few books here. We ask a $30 donation for the books. Thank you, guys.